What I want people to know is that things can happen really fast. Change is really unpredictable. It can happen in an instant or it can happen gradually over time. Like, I didn't expect to be moving around that much. I expected to just be living in one house for a few years, but it seemed like every year, every 2 years, I was in a new place. So I just um, want people to know that change is, it's forever. It's gonna happen eventually. Um, it just is a matter of when and how you deal with it.
I was born on August 23rd, 2005 in The Pas, Manitoba. Since then, I have lived in 3 different cities with multiple different people in multiple different schools. I was born into a home with my mom, dad, and at the time, 2 brothers named Cassius and Evan. Of course, I don't remember much of what was going on during the first 8 months of my life. However, at one point, my dad decided to start a new chapter in his life with a new woman and left my mom as a single mother in April of 2006. My mother has always been struggling on her own, especially during my infanthood. Looking back on the way me and my brothers used to live when we were infants is definitely not ideal. She never once backed down though. We were always her focus, her life. Of course we were bad kids sometimes. 3 little kids is hard enough to deal with already. So when my younger brother was born in October of 2008, I didn't know if it was a good or bad thing. His name is Brand, and he was a blessing in disguise. My younger brother was the best thing to ever happen to my mom. He gave her light and hope. Things started looking up, and infanthood was great. And with that, late November 2012, my mom, dog, 3 brothers, and I moved to Red Deer, Alberta. I started regularly going to school around the end of January. I was in 2nd grade at this time. Almost instantly, I had friends. Like I said before, kids just talk to other kids. School was great. It was my home away from home. The teachers were nice, the kids were nice, and the school itself was pretty nice. This is the way my life remained, with every summer from 2013 to 2016, I would visit my dad for a month in Winnipeg with my brothers Cassius and Evan. Usually, during these trips, I would feel homesick a lot, missing my mother, my dog, and my little brother. I would always cry to my dad that I would want to go home, but when we'd actually get back to Red Deer, I'd really miss my dad and Winnipeg. Dread would always follow whenever we'd be taking the road trip to Winnipeg and also when we'd go back home. This feeling to this day still lingers around my mind occasionally. I remember my mom asking us whether we wanted to move to the new part of the city or to stay where we are right now. I didn't want to go anywhere. I wanted to stay in this house, in my school, in this neighborhood. We developed a life here, with our friends and our community. At the time, it didn't feel right to move out of our house. But of course, my brothers and my mom wanted to move, so I simply had to deal with it. Unfortunately, this move would lead to hardships and a lot of troubles for me. Right from the start, it didn't feel right. This new house didn't feel like home. It wasn't comfortable or home-like to me. Nonetheless, my brothers and my mom loved it. They loved our new house, and the new schools we'd eventually be going to. At this time, we were growing up fast, realizing the world and what it can bring. I was 11 at this time, my brother Cassius being 15, Evan 12, and Brant about to turn 8. I didn't care much at this time. I didn't care for school, and I didn't care for friends. My brothers would still play outside, and there were even a few neighborhood kids around that we would hang out with. However, this time, I would usually stay inside playing video games. Whenever my mom would have free time with us, she would always make sure to do fun things with us, whether it was going to see a movie, go swimming, or going for a walk. And every time we did these things, it was a great time. Of course, there would be the occasional bickering at each other, but we would all go home happy. These are the times I cherish and will never forget. My mom worked so hard in order to make her children happy. Me and my brothers had a fulfilling life and home. By 10th grade, I was at a sort of crossroads between who I wanted to be. Did I want to be a doctor, a teacher, a scientist of some sort? The entire year, I was still wondering who and what I wanted to be, yet was still doing nothing to reach those goals. I wouldn't do very good in school. I would pass my classes, but with below average grades. I wasn't involved with the school in any way. I just went there to learn. I didn't care for much other than myself at this point. Didn't care for teachers or much of my classmates. Of course, I had friends and whatnot, but they were only people I talked to. I wouldn't try to meet anyone new. Around the end of my sophomore year, an unfortunate chain of events ensued between me and some members of my family I was living with at the time. A chain of events that would lead me moving away from the family I've lived with for nearly 16 years. As these events unfolded, I fell to an all-time low. My mental state hit rock bottom, and it sucked. Literally, it sucked. It sucked the life out of me and the liveliness I once had. For the whole month of June 2021, while I was waiting for the flight to move to Winnipeg with my dad, it was dreadful. I would avoid everyone in my family, only leaving my room to get food or use the washroom. My school exams were around the corner, and I was at a low point. Now I knew I was going to miss my family that I had in Alberta, but I was ready to move on to this next chapter in my life, and so far, it's been a turning point in my journey. According to my mother, she saw me as angry, always overreacting, and hollow. Before I moved to Winnipeg, I didn't really show much interest in most things. I was devoid of a lot of emotion, simply because I just stopped caring about anything but myself. My dad described me as confused, isolated, and sensitive. It's interesting to compare how my mother saw me and how my dad did. My mom saw the external parts of me, what was on the outside. A young man that has short outbursts at times and doesn't talk or do much. Whereas my dad saw that I did want to do things, but didn't have the proper motivation to do said things. He also saw that I wasn't great with conflict, and I'm not a very confrontational person. This is important because my dad taught me to come out of my shell and be more independent with myself. He helped me learn how to maintain a healthy lifestyle, even if I wasn't cooperating. He always tried his best to make sure I felt at home. When the time for school started rolling around, I was slightly nervous. I haven't been to school in about 3 months by this time, and I wasn't motivated in the slightest. It still felt like summer vacation, and I was just living my life. I registered late because my dad simply was lazy. His words, not mine. But when I registered, I went to school around the end of September and had a huge workload dumped on me at once. Pre-cal, chemistry, and biology in the first semester of grade 11. Keep in mind, I was still heavily unmotivated to do anything. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to see people. All I wanted to do was stay at home and talk to my friends online and my girlfriend. I would skip classes, leave early, not hand in my assignments for the first few months of school. Still being deep into my depression, I didn't care enough about school to put the effort into the work I was given. I knew why this was happening, and I knew why I was feeling this way, but I wasn't doing anything to prevent it, to stop it. At least, I wasn't trying hard enough. It's January 2022, and all of a sudden, it hit me. The one thing I did, where I realized what I was capable of doing, no matter the circumstances. My 2 online best friends were the ones that were always making me in a miserable mood. They were the ones that truly made me angry. My girlfriend also played a huge role in my downfall, but we'll get to that in a sec. I realized that these 2 friends were the bane of my life right now, and I needed to do something about it. Nobody influenced this decision at all. Sure, my girlfriend didn't like those 2 friends at all, but I never really cared about what she had to say. When I dropped those 2 friends, I realized that I had the ability to let go of people in my life. So not too long after that, I broke up with my girlfriend and cut all ties with her. It was time to focus on myself and improve my life. Throughout February and April, I made a promise to myself to get my life back on track. I started improving my grades in my new classes, being slightly more extroverted, and getting better at certain hobbies. I also had a job for a while, but that didn't last very long. I was becoming a lot more happy, doing what I want and having so much more freedom. When school started, I dreaded it. I hated it. But now, I was willingly wanting to go to school. So when I decided to come out of my shell for the first time in a while, my whole life changed. When I began talking to people in my classes at school, I finally felt comfortable. School started feeling like a home away from home. Even if I would still come to class late often, or even skip, I would keep my grades at a good standard. Feeling more comfortable at school meant feeling more comfortable with my assignments. I would get help from the friends I made, and we'd always motivate each other. Having this newfound friend group meant I could finally be myself and not be afraid of what others think, as I already had people who appreciate me. Surrounding myself with people who I care about, people who I trust, is only the first step to becoming who I want to be. But I can't forget about the person who made this all possible, the one who fought through it all, myself. After doing things I never thought I can do, I realized that I am so capable of helping myself. even if the task is big. Finding motivation is hard when looking for it in someone else. If it is yourself, it will be even harder. However, as long as you keep your loved ones, your trusted ones close, anything is possible. Support is a necessity whenever you want to achieve something within yourself. It is so easy to become unmotivated and unwilling when dealing with something eternally. I'll keep this last part short, as the rest of the pages are still being written. I realize that I am still so young. My entire future is ahead of me, and it's blinding, so bright. Growth is a mystery. We do not know what will happen tomorrow, because tomorrow will never arrive. We shouldn't linger on the past, but rather let the past guide us in whatever path we choose to take. When you make mistakes, you learn from them. Making mistakes is usually a good thing. At least, genuine mistakes are. There's a lesson in everything, and I learned that the hard way. The things I've learned over the past half-decade will always be used throughout the rest of my journey. I will always try to be better, because everyone can be a better version of themselves. All it takes is time.